So I'll be reading today from The Most Precious Gift, from Sucitto. So this is from the chapter Transformation, and from a reflection offered May 17th, 2017. My greetings to the assembly. I hope those of you who are camping out in the field are managing to find a comfortable enough abiding. It's great to see so many people doing some serious renunciation. You have left your home comforts for a piece of nylon over your head and a sleeping bag stuffed in a corner. The rain is pattering down. This is great. I'm inspired because I have a nice warm room. This in itself is already practice, isn't it? And you realize you can do it. All right, here I am. I have this body. I have this mind. Breathing in, breathing out. It's actually quite a relief not to have so much stuff to look after. So this is at a retreat that I was actually at Amravati, and it's there's about 400 people sitting in the retreat, and so this is the situation. Also, this situation of being a group of 350 or 400 people trying to operate together requires a tremendous cultivation. Everybody is going to get their meal at the same time. That's challenging. You have to queue up and receive what's offered. You have to wait. But you don't have to see it as an inconvenience. You can use this context as a training, a practice to restrain, to check and to think of the welfare of the group. There is a handful of people who have offered to steward things, and they're not trying to lay some trip on anybody. They're just trying to make it work. So you practice cooperating. And you realize it's okay, even if you can't get your own way immediately. There is a bigger thing than having our own way, and it's the welfare of the group. When we practice like this, we become a true Sangha. This is how it is for the bhikkhus, the Siladhara, and the novices. We all come in the temple and we sit on our seat. We don't decide where to sit, what cushion we want, and who is sitting next to us. Whether we like it or not, we just sit on our seat. When someone rings the bell, we get up and queue up. Some of us have been doing it for years, so we've got used to it. At first there is a distinct challenge because we are attached to me and my way. I see things this way, and I don't see why I should have to follow your way. There is a friction when we feel our normal inclinations checked. Certainly it's uncomfortable, but it does not get in the way of practice. It is practice. Practice is to meet that discomfort, that checking, that having to wait. And instead of feeling frustrated by it, we relax around it. We're okay. We're all respected. Our welfare is considered. When we tune into that, we get a tremendous sense of freedom. This is why monastics do it this way. We're not necessarily into being obedient just for the sake of it, I assure you. We are surly and rebellious at heart, and we have found out the hard way. It's important to remember this attitude because generally when people come on retreat, their motivation is to get their mind sorted out and to find some calm. Here the practice is being with 350 other people because that's chaos. You never know when you will need to go to the toilet. You can't tell your body to wait until it's convenient. You make mistakes, you forget where you put your hat, you put your shoes on in the wrong place, and so on. And all of this is multiplied by 350. So what do we have here? We have a tremendous place to keep letting go, to take our time, pay attention, and remember what we need to remember. This is practice. Living like this in itself is already considered meditation. You can use the sitting in silence to help understand what has occurred, where you've met friction, where you've held on, whether you felt annoyed or bullied, whether you felt somebody was making too much noise, and so forth. You notice the things your mind complains about and what's happening in your body. Just sit with that and keep opening and releasing. Right there at that place, you're turning something around. That is transformation. Don't think, I want to have an experience, so then I'll go home having had a wonderful experience. No, if you're into this, then you've come for transformation. You don't go home again. The person who goes home is not the person who arrived. If that happens, great. If something has shifted, something has dropped, something has become less intense, pushy, or intimidated, or something has become less obsessed with the sense of everybody dislikes me, then our practice has been fruitful. This is peaceful. This is sublime, the stilling of sankhara, the relinquishment of acquisition, the destruction of craving, dispassion, leading to cessation. Little bits of you cease, little bits of struggle, grasping, tightness, fearfulness, ill will towards yourself, snappiness, moodiness. These bits seem to be me because they are so built in, but they stop firing when you hold them with dispassion. Maybe something you've tried to push away and hoped nobody would notice suddenly came up right in your face. You had to sit with it and bear with it and find the skills to step back from it without repression or fascination, but with dispassion by holding a frame of reference. This is body, this is mind, this is feeling, this is not self, it's just this. When you give it time, it starts to release. Suffering is an action. It requires energy to keep it going. Eventually, you get too tired to suffer. You get tired of fighting, complaining, and bad-mouthing yourself. You just let it be. Then something drops. A little bit of your landscape changes. There is no longer this inner chatter, this inner tightness, pushiness, and self-obsession. Instead, there is light, space, and openness. You start to feel strangely happy. That's strange. I'm not happy because of something. I'm happy because a bit more nothing has occurred. That's transformation. It turns the mind around because you turn your attitudes around. You begin to see that maybe this life isn't about having some experience. Maybe this life is about letting go of experience and realizing what is always here. There is a passage from the suttas that runs through my mind occasionally like a mantra, especially when I'm at Amaravati, the deathless realm. It starts with, he turns his chitta away from form. Lumpur Sumedho translates chitta as consciousness. Often there can be confusion between that and the sense consciousness, so I call it awareness. Chitta is also often translated as heart or mind. Language can be a problem, but basically the chitta is your sense of I before the adjectives start. Then the passage continues. He turns his chitta away from feeling, which is either pleasure or pain. He turns his chitta away from perception, from all those immediate recognitions or impressions of pleasant, unpleasant, friendly, unfriendly, right, wrong, and so forth. He turns his chitta away from sankhara, from the activations, the programs that start running in your mind when something hits you. There are three kinds of programs: verbal programs, emotional programs, and bodily programs. Bodily programs can manifest as tension, passion, heat in the system. The blood boils and pulses. The face tightens up. The neck stiffens. The chest sinks. The shoulders collapse. These activations become us. We become the program. There we are in our program, running it once again. He's always like this. She's never like that. I always get this. I never get that. I'm like this. People don't think this of me. They think that of me. These amazing programs become our world. What triggers these activations? When the perception, somebody looked at me the wrong way, or somebody said something unpleasant to me, arises, a whole world appears. For example, we think somebody didn't say something to me, and the victim program gets activated. I got left out. Nobody respects me after all the work I've done. I worked damn hard for this. Poor me. There's also the responsibility martyrdom program. I've got to do all this. I have to make it work. It's all up to me. You hear these things in your mind and you think, oh dear, here it is again. The fashion of feeling floods the body and mind, and you turn away from that program. He turns his chitta away from consciousness. There are 6 sense consciousnesses: the eye consciousness, the ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, and mentality consciousness. He turns his chitta, that awareness, that knowingness, away from these aggregates and directs it to the deathless. This is beyond the sphere of reasoning. This is sublime, this is peaceful, the stilling of sankhara, the relinquishment of acquisitions, the destruction of craving, dispassion, ceasing, nibbana. Worthwhile? Worth doing a bit of turning for? How much is it worth? How much are you willing to pay for the deathless? A bit of discomfort? Yeah, okay. A bit of not getting your way? Okay. A bit of having to wait? Okay. A bit of being treated unfairly? Okay. A bit of not being heard? Okay. A bit of things being too slow? Okay. A bit of your mind misbehaving? Okay. A bit of violent passion arising in your mind? Okay. Feeling humiliated? Okay. Feeling you can't make it? Okay. How much is it worth? How many of these things are you going to react to? How many of your programs are you going to buy into? Turning away, how much is it worth? What does it take? Realizing deathlessness is not a small thing, not just a matter of calming your mind down a little bit. The stilling of sankhara, all those passions and tenacious habits of jealousy, greed, compulsiveness, impatience, restlessness, moaning, justifications, defensiveness, fear, and anxiety, takes some doing. What support is there for that? Being together supports it. It's important to bear in mind that everybody gets this. Everybody is going through some difficulty or struggle. It could be physical pain, painful memories, hurt feelings, or difficult lifestyles. So a little more compassion, patience, and openness for others is helpful. We definitely need to encourage these qualities in ourselves. We need to open that quality of goodwill and compassion to the conditioned world as it appears around us. People you see are not what you see. What they're experiencing is not what you see. They're experiencing karma, struggle, aspirations, difficulties, and efforts. Some generosity of heart is definitely needed. If you cultivate that towards others, there's a strong likelihood it might direct itself towards you. You might be able to be a little more generous and compassionate to yourself because it's the same experience, the same set of programs occurring. So there's a big payoff when we begin to turn things around. Compassion is one way of turning them around. There must be a better response to suffering than moaning. It takes a few years to get that one. When I was a little lad, I used to have temper tantrums. By age 60, I think I just got over it. I learned how to not show it so much, but there was still a little bit of reaction when things weren't going my way or weren't quick enough. I consider that to be pretty good. I was grinding down that tendency, realizing this is not getting me anywhere. Getting my own way isn't getting me anywhere useful. It's getting me to the next traffic jam. Have you ever seen that when you're driving? Everybody is rushing in their cars just to get to the next traffic jam. All right, I'll put my foot down, cut this guy off, barge in front of this guy, break the speed limit, jump the lights, hurry up. You saved 12 seconds and you got to the next traffic jam quicker. That's what getting your own way is like. Yes, you get a little bit, but then you get to the next traffic jam because the traffic jam is created by your refusal to flow with the change of conditions. When they're slow, you go slow. When they're fast, you go fast. You flow. Therefore, there are no traffic jams. Things are flowing. And sometimes it's time to park and wait, so you're breathing in and breathing out. You can always do some of that. That's the way you start to challenge those tenacious sankharas. That's the way you begin to turn them around. There are 3 bases of sankhara. The vachi sankhara is the verbal activation, the verbalization, all the thought programs bubbling away, the inner chatter, and of course the outer chatter. The two go together. You can rejoice in interesting thoughts, wonderful ideas, visions, funny thoughts, and great jokes. When you rejoice in them and make much of them, you end up getting enmeshed in them. So be cautious. Restraint is helpful. I made a practice of not thinking about what I don't need to think about and of not having an opinion about things if I don't need to. That takes some doing because I can think of a lot and I can easily have an opinion. If we don't need to have an opinion, why put energy into it? Of course, the thinking that we often confront in meditation is just the tip of the iceberg. It's just the froth on the surface of the sea. What's more important is the chitta sankhara, because it's what gives rise to so much thinking. The chitta sankhara is the quality of impulse, intentionality, volition, inclination, push, wish, aspiration, craving, desire, ill will, goodwill, everything that streams out. Because of constant bubbling, it urges and begins to speak and chat. Sometimes it's confusing, so you wonder, why is so much thinking going on? It's not even that much fun. Some of it's just twaddle. It's going on because beneath that there's this bubbling, this heaving, like when the sea is heaving. There are suds and froth coming up. When you have a train of thought, one way to check what's really going on underneath is to find one word that sums up the mood of that train of thought. Is it happy, complaining, excited, nervous, anxious, frightened? Is it craving for something? What's the one word that sums it up? Through this process called deep attention or proper attention, you're pruning a thought down to the emotion that's causing it to rise. This is anxiety. That's why I'm always planning the future. That's why I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing in May 2019. That's why I always wonder what would happen if. Anxiety is the feeling of, I've got to keep everything sorted out, controlled, nice and steady. There is this underlying insecurity, uncertainty, doubt, lack of groundedness, and trust. These are not accusations. It's not that you decided to do that. This is the virus we've all been infected by, which is called ignorance. Ignorance does weird things to a human being. One of the weird things it does is that it causes this mechanism called clinging. We cling to the future, to the past, to impressions of ourselves and others. We try to get it all sorted, to get it under control, and, as you know, it doesn't. Life keeps wiggling like a snake. You can't pin it down. It keeps shifting. When the mind can't cling to external things, it clings back and says, it's because you're not trying hard enough. There's something wrong with you. You're not controlling your life. It must be something you're not doing right. You must be an ineffective person. The clinging whips round like a snake. It starts to bite you. This is what we are infected by. You need to see life as a natural process. Can you tell a tree, I want you to grow this much today and this much tomorrow. I want one leaf to come out of there, and I don't want those leaves to droop. Nice and straight. It's not going to happen, is it? And yet we expect the organic experience of our body, mind, to come out nice, straight, clean, tidy, and exactly the right type. It's not going to happen. Can you live with the chaos without feeling rattled by it? Can you find a balance by taking it just a moment at a time? Try to behave ethically, morally, truthfully, kindly towards yourself and others. That's the best it's going to be. There is no such thing as a secure job. There's no secure house. Nothing is secure. Can you get it? Is that devastating? It's not that there is something wrong with you. It just is that way. The best thing you can do is learn to surf the chaos, rather than go under it or freeze, and this in itself takes some doing. Why is there so much thinking? Why so much planning, complaining, and criticism of yourself and others? You failed at the game of life. You can't get it together. It's because you try to hold it and make it a certain way. Not only do we all have that virus, but mainstream society believes in it. Be happy. Be successful. Look, she's great. She's on the billboard, looking happy and successful. She's sorted out. The successful people are sorted out, but they don't exist. They're just images. When you find out that some high-flying, successful, smooth, effective, business-like person has a substance abuse problem, or beats his kids up, or ends up cracking up and jumping out of a window, the amount of gripping and control they needed to try and make it steady has caused their system to malfunction. That's what happens. People crack up. But they don't put that on the billboards. Learn how to be a nervous wreck. It's always, get yourself a new Lexus and zoom, zoom, zoom to the next traffic jam. You need to recognize that how you are is exactly how you are. Can you be with that? You can, actually. That's the beauty. I'm not trying to make it miserable. I'm just saying it straight. You can be with that. You can open around that. You can release around that. But generally, we only do it when we don't have any other option, when we can't wriggle around it. We let go to a certain extent, but we finally let go because we have no other choice. That's also one of the realities of training. We make vows and decide to live under a discipline because they hold us. At first you might think, oh no, I can't go on like this. But after a while, you realize that was worth it. It can happen. So we're tackling the chitta sankhara until it stops that reckless push and pull, that grasping. Then we begin to enter the sphere, the domain of letting go, which is the gate to the deathless. What is the relationship between the kaya, body, and the chitta? They have a partnership. They both feel. They are affected by feeling. What is feeling? It flashes, doesn't it? There's a push that comes out of feeling. When it's pleasant, we think, oh, that's lovely. When it's painful, we immediately react, oh no. Feeling does that. It pushes, it nudges. Then sankhara picks up that nudge and runs with it. With pleasure, it goes, I'm going to go and get some more of that. With displeasure, it goes, I can't. I'm not going to stand this another moment. You can't do this to me. I have rights. Feeling lights the blue touch paper and sankhara gets running. When you contemplate, you look at the different sense consciousnesses. The eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, and mind consciousness. They are always lined up in this order. When you run through that list, do you see what's happening? That sequence represents an increasing intensity. With the eye consciousness, you can see things, but they don't necessarily see you. You can sit back and watch things. You're distant from them. You can be uninvolved. The eye consciousness is relatively cool. When you look around, there's always a distance. You have the impression, I'm separate from it. It's not very intense at all. The ear consciousness is around me, isn't it? The world I'm hearing could be near or far. I'm in the middle of it. It's a little more emotional. I'm more affected because I'm surrounded by what I hear, and it can hear me. What happens with the nose consciousness? Something enters me. You get up my nose, as we say. It jumps in. It's not around me. It's coming in, even if it's only for a few seconds. It's a very reactive sense, isn't it? We smell the fragrance of flowers. Nice. Or the foulness of stench, and we quickly recoil. It's getting more intense. Then there's the tongue consciousness. What you taste is going to go down your throat. It's really getting into you. Then the body consciousness. When you touch something, there's no distance at all. What you touch touches you. You'd better be careful. This is becoming rather intense. There is no distance anymore. You can't touch something and not have it touch you. It could be a nice warm blanket on a cold day. It could be a sweaty duvet. It could be a menacing grip around your throat. It could be a hug. Whatever it is, you jump. There is no distance. This is getting pretty intense. Finally, there's the mind consciousness. Whatever occurs in your mind, not only does it touch you, but you become it. It's completely merged. You experience yourself primarily as your mind. That's very intense because any thought, any impression, any emotion feels like me. It doesn't feel like something happening to me. It feels definitely like me getting upset. It rushes. It's chaotic. This is the increasing line the Buddha is pointing to. It starts off with the soft stuff. Oh yeah, visual phenomena. I can let go of that. I can close my eyes. I can also plug some wax in my ears when somebody is doing yoga in the room above my head because I can't stand the noise. Okay, you can get away with that. What about when it gets cold? You sit there shivering. Where are you going to go? You may be able to put another coat on or turn the heater on. All right, but what about when it gets to your mind? Where are you going to go? Where are you going to run to? It doesn't shut off, does it? Day or night, 24/7, it's on. It's playing those old programs. At any time, those programs can come up. And there you are in them again. This is very intense. It really feels like me. That's the issue. The eye doesn't feel, but the mind interprets the eye's impression and gets delighted or irritated by a sight. It's the mind that does that. Only the mind and the body feel. The effect of feeling is this constant flash and push going on, popping around in your mind and body. Often it's not too difficult, but it's still churning. Sometimes things are challenging. You're hurt by the words of another. You experience painful memories and so on. That feeling is pushing into your mind, and the sankharas, the weeping, the grief, the agitation, the resentment, the feeling of fear or anxiety, are there. You're pinned. Where are you going to go then? That's the problem with sense consciousness. The Buddha said it's like being stabbed with spears or shot with arrows. But you can come out of this. You can turn away from this. You can steady sankhara through the development of mind and the development of body. This is how you do it. And you do it because you have to. You have to because there's nowhere to run. In situations of restraint, there's less wiggle room. You can't just go for a walk, have a cup of coffee, or switch something on. You're stuck with this body-mind. Sometimes it's fine and pleasant. Sometimes it's dull and boring, and you're fed up. Sometimes you're elated by plans and visions. Oh, I'm really going to do that. I'll save the world. Why sit there and meditate and waste my time? It's constantly churning. Why do we need to cultivate body when the problem lies in the mind? If it's properly cultivated, the body can provide a mooring post. It's the ground, the stabilizer. It also knows how to discharge energy. All that push of the mind sends a lot of energy into the system. Sometimes you can get quite heated or feel very heavy, tense, tight, or disoriented. What's happening is that all the Vedana and the Sankharas are pushing and driving, churning up energy. Eventually you feel bunged up in your head or fidgety and restless. You're twitching all the time. For example, if you're thinking, oh, watching that dang breath again, I'm going to go nuts. Gently breathe out within that experience. The body knows how to discharge. The mind doesn't, not by itself. This is how you allow the discharge to happen. Relax, open the palms of the hands, open the soles of the feet, relax the jaw, open the temples of the head, the sockets of the eyes and the forehead, drop your shoulders, loosen your belly, breathing out, releasing. You begin to see that those mental, emotional, or psychological patterns have a body correlative, and you work on their bodily aspect. It may not give you clear solutions as to why you feel this way, what you're going to do with the rest of your life, how you're going to sort out this person and so forth, but it will tell you how to stop suffering. For right now, you take some intensity out. Then you may see things more clearly. This is the development of body, and you need to do that. Otherwise, there's this kind of psychological tennis match happening in your mind. You're constantly trying to correct yourself. Stop thinking that. Stop that silly thought. No, you stop. I must stop thinking that I must stop thinking that silly thought. I should be more accepting. Well, how do you do acceptance? I don't know. How do you do acceptance? That's doubt. I shouldn't have doubt either. Just let go. Let go of what? What should I do? I'm thinking too much. How do I stop all this thinking? Perhaps thinking is okay. It's a good way of looking at it. I better write that down, actually. Be happy thinking is good for you. I could even develop a new spiritual program. Thinking is good for you. Oops, that's another 10 minutes gone. Oh well, only another 40 to go. Do you want to spend your life doing that, playing tennis matches in your head? Or is it better to say, this is restlessness, this is ill will. It feels like this, and when I feel like that, there's tension in my chest and a gripping in my face. Why don't I relax that, soften my gaze, and loosen my belly? You downshift the energy that keeps that process going. Then things change. That's the development of body. What about the development of mind? One of the ways you develop the mind is by cultivating this sense of acceptance. In a way, it's very similar to the development of body. As you widen your mind, you widen your focus. Whatever arises, it arises. Here it is. You develop acceptance and also a sense of self-respect by recognizing, I am making the effort to accept difficult conditions. This is worthy. I could be projecting it onto somebody else, but I'm accepting it. This in itself is worthy. Let's have a little bit of self-respect with this acceptance. You widen and stabilize the mind. Then you start to recognize the difference between the mind as container and the mind as content. The mind as content is this constant churning of emotions and thoughts, the psychology. The mind as container is the knowing, the space within which things occur. If you can properly and fully give attention to the quality of that space, opening to it, praising it, valuing it, your attention shifts from the content to the container, and the content begins to fade because you're not giving it any energy. Wherever you put your attention, you give energy, so the more intensely you attend to your difficulties in that way, strangely enough, you give them more power. It doesn't mean you should repress or neglect the difficulties. Instead, you are opening, sensing the emotional stuff, the psychological stuff, within a space of acceptance. It's not spacing out. There's a careful balance there, holding your stuff with a patient, accepting heart, and valuing that. This is what I have to be with now. You develop tremendous deep patience and gut-level compassion, a sense of, wow, everybody gets this. Remember, there is nothing wrong with you. We all caught the infection, and we all have the cure. Turning away, giving less attention, being less fixated, frazzled, and infatuated with the content of the mind, looking at it with dispassion. That leads to the stilling of sankharas and the destruction of craving, the craving to be somebody who's got it together, or the craving to be the model person, or the normal person, who nobody is. You might wish, if only I was normal, but there are no normal people. The normal person is you. In other words, a container with a lot of content that churns around. That's the norm. And to attain that norm, a certain powerful quality of craving is being broken up. The craving to be something or to form an image. The container doesn't have an image. It's just that. By and large, the unawakened, untrained mind copes with this chaos of sankharas by establishing a kind of super sankhara to patrol the mind. You can imagine the mental content as being like plasma or jelly, churning, gurgling away. You squeeze it, and a little thing pops up into a protuberance that looks at the rest of it. This protuberance is called me, and me in there is going to sort my mind out. Me, this little thing that's emerged, watches my mind and says, you behave yourself. You shouldn't be that way. Don't. Shut that one up. That didn't happen. It does a lot of that. It's a spin doctor. This protuberance thinks it's separate from the mind, but it's actually something that the mind forms to try to manage this rather chaotic experience of feeling, perceptions, sensations, sankharas, choices, and so forth. Somebody has to manage it. So this thing pops up. It's pretty busy because it feels it should be effective and good at its job. And other people confirm that. They say, you should behave yourself. You shouldn't have those nasty thoughts. You should be happy. So you think, all right, okay, and you force a fake smile. That expectation then goes into that little me thing. Okay, shut up. Stop that. You're supposed to be this. Come on, go and get one of those. If you can't get one, fake one. So everybody is saying, I'm fine, you're fine, yeah, we're all fine, we're all happy here. Everything's fine, I'm cool, I'm all right. Having a good day. Liars. But that's the currency, isn't it? Most of the time you can manage. You're keeping stuff down, pushing it aside, and getting a little bit of the feel-goods to keep the troops happy in there. But once that me thing has arisen, it starts to need an identity. It assumes it is something. It wants to be something. It's called the self-image. We place a lot of hope on that, and we expect a lot out of it, but it really is just a system that is trying to make the mind manageable. Most people do good most of the time, but sometimes we just can't. The self can't manage the pressure, stress, grief, bereavement, panic, or chaos, and it breaks down. This isn't just chit-chat. That's happening in your mind. This is major floods of emotions, and often they're not even verbal. Some of it comes from shock or trauma and gets very intense. It can be so intense that the mind basically blacks out, cuts off. When people have breakdowns, sometimes they don't even know where they are or what's happened. This is deeper than just a bit of mental chit-chat. I've talked with people who've been raped, and they never feel safe. They have this constant sense of nervousness and threat. Many people who have been abused as children never feel safe. They never feel they're right. Something is wrong with them all the time. There's nothing verbal going on. This is the stuff that doesn't speak. It becomes you. We become the unloved. We believe in it. We so believe in it that we don't even know that we're loved. That's tragic. You can see people living in a cloud of gloom and self-hatred, thinking that other people don't like me. It's not necessarily verbalized, but there's a certain crushedness of the heart. It's not anybody's fault. We just got a big dose of ignorance. Maybe somebody else's ignorance was dumped on us. Maybe we had to face a tragedy that we weren't capable of managing, such as a suicide or bereavement. The mind just collapsed. The self couldn't handle it, so it shut down. Then you have these patterns that get stuck in the body. Fear patterns, guilt patterns, shame patterns. Some things can't be dealt with through listening to the noises in your head because they don't speak. They freeze you in your throat. They grip you in the belly. And you wonder, what's that? But you don't know because they have no voice. This is why you cultivate body. In your body, you can feel pressure and closing. The skin closes, the face withdraws, the shoulders hunch. You know something has happened. When you come back to the sitting posture, sense your spine, open up and feel what you feel. Then that thing begins to speak. It might speak in strange moods and feelings. That's how it works out. You realize that in a generation of people infected with ignorance, on fire with craving, the political situation, bombs being dropped, racial discrimination, violence towards other people, there's a lot of damage. You can't think your way out of it. It goes deeper than that. It gets under your skin and becomes you. Because it becomes your mind, it becomes you. And as it becomes you, you start doing the same thing to other people. You transmit the disease. You don't want to, but if your dad beat you up, the likelihood is that you're going to beat your kids up because you haven't been able to handle rage and frustration. Nobody showed you how to. If your dad and your mom weren't able to handle their stuff, the likelihood is that you got infected with that. And it goes on and on from generation to generation. But there is an end to this. Otherwise, it would be cruel to point it out. In fact, to not point it out makes the practice seem a bit facile. There's something to be deeply changed and transformed here. Although the words dispassion or destruction of craving may sound ethereal, the transformation they refer to actually comes down to the particular details of what our desperation or hunger is around, the personal details of what sankharas are firing. Then it suddenly becomes very real, personal, and intense. This is what we live in, and restraint, the ability to hold your stuff, is a big part of that. If you can't hold it, you have to find a way to expand your space. If you can't hold it while sitting, try to do it while walking. The propulsion to move forward or to get away, the propulsion to blame somebody, the endless rehearsal of our wounds and blemishes, the endless fantasizing, the endless self-criticism, the feeling there's something wrong with me that could be made right. If I got something, what does it take to turn those sankharas around? Stop. Restrain it. This is not self. This is a sankhara. No sankhara arrives at nibbana. They do not go that way. You're not going to get off the hook until that has dropped. And when that drops, you will feel joyful, full, free, happy, not empty. Those who are tethered by restraint have broken the shackles of craving. Those who are not restrained, seemingly free agents, are driven by craving. That turns it upside down, doesn't it? All the people who are keeping precepts are the ones whose craving is going to break. There is freedom in that. All the people running around making lots of money are the people who have the hook of craving down their gullet, and it's pulling them around. What you see is not people. What you see is sankharas pulled around by craving. There's nothing to envy about people who are getting their own way. You think, uh-oh, she's getting her own way. There's going to be a bill to pay in a little while. There's death for a start. Contemplate these things. Develop that restraint. Remember it. Restraint is painful to desire and humiliating to sankharas. But if liberation is what matters most in your life, you think, oh, thank you. You helped to get that hook out of my jaw. You feel that sense of release from these pressures in your body and in your mind. You're turning away, losing interest, not buying into the glow messages, the passion messages, and the insidious messages of the aggregates of form, feeling, perception, and sankharas. You've had enough. You're fed up with them. This is nibbida. You're turning away. This is peaceful. This is sublime. This is the stilling of sankhara. This is the entry into the deathless. No one who has entered the deathless ever regretted it and said, "Oh, dang it. I was having such a good time. Now that I've gone onto this deathless stuff, I can no longer go and party like I used to." They never say that. They say, "This is a relief. This is peaceful. This is sublime. Therefore, please make use of this special time." How special it is. It's made special because of the number of you and the commitments, the purposes, the intentions, and the experiences you're bringing in here, and also because of the challenges you meet just by being in a group. The rough stuff is as valuable as the smooth stuff. If it's getting rough, it's good. You must be getting somewhere. So keep going. Learn the message. Turn it around. This is for your long-lasting welfare and happiness.
Thank you, Ajahn. I think in the last paragraph or so, there was about those who keep the precepts, how there's freedom. How can one see that when you're in a state where you feel like keeping precepts is restraining one, and there's that craving, say, when you're on retreat and you really want allowables and there's none around? How can we see the freedom behind that when it's really, really tough?
Well, it's not often immediate. So like in the moment, restraint around something, or keeping a moral compass where we'd rather not. I mean, in the case of allowables, there's nothing moral there, just so you know. So it's not there. There are some things we do that are restraining to really kind of work with desire, and then there's these other moral things, like we might want to kill something like a mosquito or whatever. But either way, what's immediately usually coming up when we have this kind of boundary is, I want to break that boundary if it's kind of desire strong enough, or like, let's say we're getting annoyed by a mosquito, or we really have this desire for something to eat, and we see that, okay, I'm not gonna do that, or I really want to do that, and then it's sort of, but should I do it? And as soon as it starts to go there, there's this kind of craving is kind of getting a foothold in there. But when we restrain that and we make a decision, at first there's this friction that Lumpur Sucitto is talking about, and that's, as he's saying, it's actually good to experience, because that's telling us there's something there. Like when we don't restrain ourselves, we don't feel the friction, we just go for it. And so when that comes about, at first there's this friction and this feeling of that, but then when you don't do it, if you, one, witness what occurs, which is usually that craving diminishes after that. It usually can't just sustain itself long enough, because, how long are you going to crave that chocolate or candy or cheese or whatever, and then, like, it's just the next day. It's like, okay, it passes. And so the freedom comes from going through that friction and then seeing, like, oh, okay, it really wasn't that big of a deal. I was able to handle that. When people just exercise, just getting whatever they want, they don't see that. So that's why Lumpur calls it an opportunity. We see this as an opportunity because we get to see that it was like, I think Ajahn Sucitto had a talk where the title was Sweet Cravings, Little Lies. And it's like, it's really about, like, we believe it, and it's kind of like in the talk I gave last night, it's like really believing in the contents of our mind, having some story about anger, aversion, or somebody wronging us, or how I need to have this thing. And then we can really believe that, but then when we see that we restrain ourselves against something, we say, oh, okay, I was kind of wrong about that. Like, I really believed that. And and then we know that the next time it comes up, or when it does come up again, we've gained some power because we see, oh, I remember this happened last time, and I was able to resist it, and I saw that it actually wasn't a big deal. Like I actually had a calmer state of mind. I wasn't resenting myself for like having broken something that I promised myself not to do. I wasn't having these kind of doubts coming up, and so there's not all this kind of these problems in the mind that are coming up as a result because the restraint has been activated. And then over time, it just gets more. We feel more confident, and that's the freedom he's talking about. Is that it's not that we can just do these things without friction. It's like it's part of the path. It's part of the experience. Is difficulty and dukkha, but it's the dukkha that goes to the end of dukkha. That's the freedom. And so eventually, something can just feel so natural and helpful that we just feel like really like, yeah, that wouldn't be helpful for me. So the craving might still be there, but then we have the wisdom and the experience to know, like, yeah, but actually, it's not gonna help me, and I do really want to move more towards like quiet and peace and calm and non-complication, and this is just going to complicate things and increase my desire. So we kind of can give ourselves a pep talk or pat ourselves on the back, but we feel that freedom just from having exercised restraint. So that's how usually it comes up. But one of the things that Lumpur was talking about in that talk a lot was kind of really not being afraid of friction and difficulty, because a lot of times our practice is about gaining peace and getting happy, and we skip the painful part. We want to kind of get something, and that's craving again, but we're not understanding that to realize peace, we really need to also realize suffering and to be with it and not be afraid of it. And then that's how we sort of transform and move towards peace, even while experiencing suffering.
It also seems to be that if you holding precepts and you have these cravings, you don't give in to these cravings, you start to develop that that these cravings are from the body and the mind, and you're separating yourself from that. And as you continue to practice, the sense of self goes away, and you see the impermanence in everything. And as you practice more and more, you get closer to not self and liberation.
Yeah, it's also that sense of like not taking it personally. So we often think I'm wrong or I'm bad or this is difficult for me or why me or all this stuff that Lumpur was talking about, and that just starts to loosen because we witness, rather than just get so mixed up in it. But it's very hard to do if we're giving in. If we're just kind of like, you just think about somebody who's an addict, they have no chance, with their addiction. They just keep giving into it. So their whole self, their whole being is just wrapped up into me and getting what I want. It's sort of like living in the ghost realm, but you're not. So yeah, the opposite of that is that self is really disbanded through seeing clearly, like, all of these things are arising and ceasing, and I don't have to kind of buy into them and then put this whole, as Lumpur was saying, protuberance, this eye that comes out and then says, no, this is me, this is all about me, and that kind of protuberance goes down, the inflammation reduces.
Because it traps you.
Yeah.
It's a cycle. Yeah. Thank you.